We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessing of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. 250 years ago on this very day, a scrappy band of rebels from 13 colonies decided to stand up against one of the most powerful empires the world has ever seen and create a government of the people, by the people, for the people that still stands to this very day. Here is but a handful of the many, many souls that fought to keep this dream alive. We'll start off our list by talking about Colonel Van T. Barfoot. He was a World War II combat veteran that was able to sprint through a minefield without setting off a single one, knocked out 3 enemy machine gun positions, killed 8 Germans, captured 17 other Germans, and knocked out a tank with a bazooka standing out in the middle of the road. This was all in the span of under a freaking hour. Okay, we need a quick change of music here. This guy is unfreaking believable. One shift in video tone later. Alright, that's a little more fitting for the subject matter. So needless to say, the then Sergeant Barfoot was greatly awarded for his actions at that battle, including up to the greatest honor any soldier can gain, the Congressional Medal of Honor. He would proceed to serve decades onward both through the Korean and Vietnam War before finally retiring at the rank of a colonel. Though many Americans would only really hear his name long after his service, during a little incident out in Richmond, Virginia. In 2009, the retired colonel would open his mailbox and find a letter from his neighborhood HOA stating he could no longer fly the American flag on the 21-foot flagpole in his front yard. Okay, I know I'm stopping the music again, but I just have to seriously ask, who the hell thought that was a good idea? Needless to say, the colonel continued to fly his flag within his yard until his passing, and in 2023, Fort Pickett was renamed Fort Barfoot in his honor. Before we get down to the career of Admiral Willis Augustus Lee, aka Ching Lee, we need to talk about a few fun facts about the man. As a child, his eyesight was severely damaged after an incident involving a coffee can and a whole lot of black powder. Despite that incident permanently damaging his eyesight to the point where he needed glasses, he would move on to win first place in a competition of both rifle and pistol shooting. His nickname of Ching came from his fascination with Asian history to the point where he could sign his name in Chinese characters. And perhaps his most stunning achievement above all of those is being able to defeat bureaucracy.
That's not possible.
Let's agree to disagree.
Oh yeah, you heard me right. This absolute mad lad was able to cut through the red tape like Jason Voorhees through a bunch of horny teenagers to get so much better equipment for the Navy. Radars installed in naval ships, better water purifiers for submarines, getting through the newly developed proximity fuses for anti-aircraft shells. I could easily go on for another half hour talking about this guy's achievements, but it's just going to triple this video's length. So I'll just cap it off with my favorite section, the fact that he was able to predict that battleships were not going to be the future of naval warfare within World War II. I don't know how he did it. Apparently Apollo just told him, hey, dude, you might want to tell your Navy to change course here. I saw what Germany and Japan are going to do, and the only thing they're going to build are shitty coral reefs. Let's turn the clock back to World War I to talk about our next American hero, Lieutenant Frank Luke, aka the Arizona Balloon Popper. Now you might be thinking to yourself, oh, he must have gotten famous for shooting down a lot of those giant zeppelins that were used in World War I, right? No, the balloons in his nickname are referring to these scouting balloons. These were used to help spot enemy movements and to help artillery more accurately target their shells. If you've played Battlefield 1, you probably just assume that these are giant, helpless floating sacks of hydrogen, but no, they are not. That is far from the truth. You need a certain mixture of oxygen along with hydrogen in order to create combustion, so these things just didn't explode at the drop of a hat. But even if you were to damage the scout balloons, they could easily be repatched and refilled with hydrogen and get right back to the job. Then you also have to contend with any enemy planes that are attempting to shoot you down because you're trying to shoot their buddies down. Oh yeah, and you also have to contend with AA fire. Oh yeah, and you need a very specific type of incendiary round to go against these balloons exclusively, so that means if you end up in a dogfight, you're gonna be shit out of luck. So yeah, going up against a giant gas bag full of hydrogen made you the bullseye, and this guy was able to do it over a dozen times over. Everyone's thinking that, I'm just gonna say it, fuck the Red Baron, give this guy a movie. General Terry de la Mesa Allen, aka Terrible Terry. It's hard enough to just pick a handful of achievements of a lot of the guys on this list, but for Allen, oh my god, it's going to be impossible. The guy saw action in both World War I and World War II and had the exact same mentality for both of those conflicts of leading out there in the front with his men. The guy always put the men under his command far above any of the opinions or any of the dog and pony show of the other officers, to the point where he did not have any of his men refer to him as Sir or General, they just called him Terry. That latter part about not giving too much of a shit about his fellow officers' opinion unfortunately led to him being essentially just removed from frontline service during World War II. At least that was until General Eisenhower, yes, that Eisenhower, basically told everyone, stop being a bunch of catty bitches. I don't care if he doesn't do our dog and pony show. We need him. He's effective. I think the perfect way to describe just how badass this guy was to describe the guy he served with. That was none other than Theodore Roosevelt Jr. Yes, I am talking about the son of Teddy Roosevelt. Next up is a man who I believe embodies the spirit of the Marine Corps, and that is Sergeant Major Dan Daly. No, that's not Photoshop, that is not AI, that is in fact the man himself wearing 2 Medals of Honor. Allow me to hastily tell you how he earned both of them. His first Medal of Honor was rewarded during a conflict known as the Boxer Rebellion. SparkNotes version, a bunch of Chinese nationals that were very adept in martial arts were not big on the Western influence that was going on in China and decided to do something about it by, well, essentially murdering every last foreigner that was coming into the country. Enter the then Private Daly, who was charged with guarding a bunch of refugees at a legation building so they could be evacuated. That very legation center would later be charged by hundreds, and I do mean hundreds, of Boxer rebels. It's about here that it's worth noting that many of the Boxer rebels did not carry any form of firearms and only carried traditional martial arts weapons because they truly believed their martial arts prowess made them immune to bullets. Guess what happened next? Let's just move on to how he got the second medal. That would happen in 1915 during the Cacos Rebellion in Haiti. This would be after salvaging a machine gun from the river and bringing it back to his unit so they can utilize it not only to defend themselves but drive back their enemy from attacking. But perhaps his most famous feat, rarely attributed to him, was when he rallied his Marines during World War I by giving the famous mantra, "Come on, you sons of bitches, do you want to live forever?" It was also that day he helped give the Marines their nickname, the Devil Dogs, by the Germans. I feel this one image more than explains the career of Major Richard Bong, aka Dick Bong. He became America's ace of aces in World War II by shooting down at minimum 40 Japanese fighters over the Pacific Theater. And yes, I do say 40 minimum because of this one crucial factor throughout his career. It turns out the Major would often critically damage a lot of Japanese planes and then would have one of his men under his command shoot at it before it went down, and then he would say, "Congratulations, you shot down that Japanese pilot and his plane." The guy was literally giving away confirmed kills to the rest of his men to pad out their stats, and he still became the ace of aces. I am not making this shit up! To call somebody like Roy Benavientes tough would be so much of an understatement, it would downright be insulting. As a paratrooper in Vietnam, he stepped on a landmine, breaking his back and severely damaging both of his legs and rattling his brain to shit until one day he was able to think again. Then, as the army was ready to medically discharge him out, he literally proved he was going to walk it off. No, I am not kidding. The guy literally brute forced himself into walking again.
How the hell is this dude still alive?
He is not a dude. You're a dude. This is a man.
Oh, wait, damn it, I think I used that clip too soon. I still gotta talk about the insane shit he got up to in Mac v SOG. A SOG team in Cambodia accidentally discovers an enemy base and are absolutely getting swarmed and getting peppered by gunfire. Without a second's hesitation, Benavidez gears up and gets on the next helicopter heading over to their location. But in his haste, he did not grab a gun, he did not grab grenades, all he has on him is an aid kit and his 8-inch recon knife. So, the guy is basically just going in practically naked, but he still manages to recover very important classified intelligence, call in air support, evacuate 8 of the SOG team, and he was able to take out quite a few of the enemy despite taking multiple bullet, shrapnel, and stab wounds.
If you're trying to ruin my day, you're gonna have to try harder.
The only reason Benavidez didn't get a Medal of Honor until 15 years after this was because SOG and their operations was so classified, nobody was supposed to know they existed. If I had a nickel for every time a United States Marine Corps member managed to mow down a bunch of fighters from an Asian country during a world war with a machine gun, I'd have 2 nickels. That's not a lot, but it's weird it's happened twice. In the case of Gunnery Sergeant John Basil, this was during the Second World War in the Pacific Theater, particularly during the Battle of Guadalcanal against the Imperial Japanese Army. Him and his machine gun crew were literally stacking bodies to the point where he had to move the pile of bodies to get a clear range of fire. Much like Dan Daly, he received the Medal of Honor for his bravery in the Battle of Guadalcanal, but during his acceptance speech, he was saying that it was simply not him. He was doing what any other Marine would have in his situation, and he also gave huge credit to his fellow Marines during the battle. He would show that exact same form of bravery in the landing of Iwo Jima, where he bravely led his men off of the beach during a Japanese ambush. Sadly, Basilone would lose his life to a mortar strike, and he was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross, solely because at that point it became impossible for any serviceman to earn the Medal of Honor twice. I have my doubts that the way I formatted this video is even going to remotely do justice to the exploits of Alvin York, but by God, I'll try. During the Aragon Offensive, York and a small detachment of the 82nd Division were successful in capturing a high-ranking German officer and an entire command center. However, soon after that capture, they would come under fire from both German artillery and a machine gun position. York would order his men to stand back and guard the prisoners while he would move forward, get into a prone position, and fire back at the machine gun position. By all accounts, what happened next is that the Germans basically fired a perfect silhouette of the guy with the machine gun without landing one bullet on him, while York proceeded to put a 30-06 in the brain of every sorry bastard that was manning that machine gun. After about 20 or so of those guys got absolutely domed, some of them then decided they're just going to fix bayonets and charge this one singular guy, in which case York pulled out his Colt 1911 pistol and proceeded to take them out too, by shooting them the same way he would shoot a flock of geese back home stateside.
I couldn't make this shit up. I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. I'm sad that I lack the talent to make this shit up.
Needless to say, after both proving that Stormtrooper aim is apparently historically accurate and just treating the mighty empire of the Kaiser Wilhelm as a bunch of flocking geese, the original German officer that got captured orders every man on that hill to surrender, and York and the other 17 members of the 82nd Division go back to friendly lines with 132 prisoners. Yeah, again, I don't even think I'm beginning to do this story justice, so let's just move on to our final guy on the list. If you thought Alvin York was unbelievable, wait until you hear this exploit from Audie Murphy. We'll start with his most famous feat, holding back a literal wall of German soldiers with a Browning 50 caliber machine gun while standing on a burning, soon-to-explode tank destroyer, while also calling in artillery. His exact words to the people on the other side of the line as he's calling in this artillery for the coordinates are, "Hold the phone, I'll let you talk to the bastards." Another one of his greatest accomplishments happened after the war, though, when he publicly told all of the United States the effects he suffered from with post-traumatic stress disorder. His condition not only made all of the country aware of this, But if the most decorated soldier in all the United States was talking about this, it made so many other veterans not afraid to open up and speak out about what they are suffering through when they got home. I want to make it very clear that everything I have talked about with all 10 of these men have been fractions upon fractions of their accomplishments on and off the line of duty. And I just hope I did everything I could to give them the respect they deserve. I know this is way out of left field from my usual content, but I hope you all watched it anyway and gave all the feedback you should. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and have a happy 4th of July.